for our next experiment, we're going to build what we call a galvanometer. And a galvanometer is a way to detect if current is flowing in a wire. Because remember, if we go to our electromagnet, what was causing the magnetic field? If you think back to the lecture, it was the current flowing in the wire. And so if a current flowing in a wire makes a magnetic field, we can use that to detect when current is flowing. So to build this galvanometer and to test it, we're going to want a couple of wires. We're going to want the battery pack. We're going to want the long length of wire. It's about 2 meters long, maybe a little bit longer. We're going to want our compass. You're going to want the cardboard, just a piece of cardboard, whether it's from your box ramp or whether it's just another piece lying around. I found the rubber band to be handy. You'll see why in a second. And some tape or some string or something will be very handy. And again, I'll explain why in a second. So the first thing you're going to do is just straighten your wire out. And just like before, you're going to want to strip the ends so you can connect to it. Make sure that metal is exposed. Once you've prepared your wire, you're then going to take one of the batteries out of your pack. And the first thing I want you to do is to just cut a little piece of the cardboard that's roughly the size of the battery out. So I just use the battery as a scale and then cut this out. And you'll have just a little piece of cardboard that's going to act like a shelf when we build our little galvanometer. You're then going to take your wire, make sure you leave a little length so you can connect to it, and you're going to wrap it around the battery. And you're going to wrap this entire length around the battery. So it means you're going to kind of squish it together when it comes around. Now I have one built, so I'm going to stop right here, but I'll show you the problem we're going to have is that when you're done, and I can pull it off, you're going to see that it's going to want to spring open and it's going to be way too long. So what you want to do is find a way to connect and squish these coils a little bit together. They don't have to be tight. They don't have to be kind of like perfectly lined up or anything. Just want to be so they aren't quite so springy. You can try keep pressing it. Eventually you might get something, but you won't get terribly close. I recommend you do that first. And then you can just loop a little tape around this, and you'll see this in a second. That will cause the whole thing to hang together. And it'll be kind of held together. You can use string, you can use tape, you can use anything like that. So when I'm done, I had something that looked like this. You can see I used all the coil of wire around it. I used the tape just to kind of keep them from trying to spring apart. And then I'm going to want to put my compass in there and hold this. So I'm going to get my wires so they kind of stick up. So that's where my little shelf was handy. I can stick my shelf in there and I'll set my compass, but as you can see, this wants to rock. And so that's where I found the little rubber band to be a little bit handy to hold it up. So now I'm going to stick my compass in, and the one thing you're going to want to do is have your compass at least somewhat perpendicular to the axis of the coil. So this is the axis of the coil. And the compass, I want to be pointing perpendicular to that. So I'm going to stick it in there, and we're not going to be able to see it very well, but I think you can, oop, my hand is really not helping you, is it? We're going to stick it in there so it looks something like this. And you can see that the axis is a little bit perpendicular to this. It's okay if it's at a little bit of an angle, but what you don't want is it to be perfectly lined up along like this. You don't want that orientation. You want something where you're still just a little bit perpendicular. Then you're going to set your compass in there, and again, you're not going to be able to see much, but you'll be able to see it when you're doing it. Now, as you do this, I'm going to want you to draw some pictures so that you can scan them and show what's going up. So here I've kind of schematically drawn my battery, and here's the two wires that I'm going to connect to run current through it. And I've drawn my compass, and it's kind of oriented like this. I tried to draw the compass so the one dark end and the not filled end didn't work so well, so you can draw a little arrow that points like this. Now you're going to want to actually hook up your battery pack, so you need to put your battery back in. And again, you're going to go ahead and hook up one end of this, and your compass may fall out, so And you may have a better way of keeping this from rocking around. You can come up with any way you want to do it. Just make sure it's not metal down there. It can be a little cardboard form or anything. Just don't put a piece of metal there. Yeah. Then I'm going to hook it other end. Again, I don't want to leave this hooked up very long. But what I'm going to want to do then is hook this up and notice what happens to the magnet. And again, you can't see it very well, but the magnet has deflected along the axis of the coil. Note which way it's pointing. And on your other drawing, so this is the original unpowered. Here I have, sorry, this is the original unpowered. Here's the powered. And so here was my original orientation. And when I turned it on again, my drawing wasn't very good, but my compass deflected when it lined up like this. When I put positive, that's the red wire connected to this end, and negative, that's when the black wire is hooked up to that end. So I want you to note this when I hooked up the black and red on one orientation, and I want you to do it again when I put the black and red in the other orientation. It's going to be important to know which way it's deflecting, because remember, the current runs from positive to minus. So current is flowing through it this way, and you're going to make current flow through the other way, and I want you to note those observations. I'm also going to want you to take a picture of your setup when you're done. It doesn't have to be hooked up. That's not necessary. Again, we don't want to leave this hooked up too long. But just take a picture of your setup and include that as well, doing your best to get a shot of the compass. But again, it may not be perfect because it's kind of hidden by the wire.